Hi everyone, my name is Elaine, and today I want to take some time to discuss my experience rereading the Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett now that I've taken the time to, reread them. I think overall my experience was a very good one. However, I did remember a lot more of the novels than I thought I would, even though I've read some of them roughly a decade ago. And this detracted from my ability to enjoy them because there was less of a surprise factor. I had an idea of what was going to happen. It happened. I was like, well, yeah, that totally happened. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that too. And it wasn't as exciting for me. There were also a lot of novels in this series. Well, maybe a lot is a bit of an exaggeration, but there are novels in this series which I do not like Going Postal and I Shall Wear Midnight, that slow down a series that can seem very, very slow at times and make the prospect of reading 41 books again even more overwhelming than it felt at times. And this is even though the books, for the most part, are very, very fast reads. I mean, it did take me 7.5 months to complete the series, but there are books that are less than 200 pages. A lot of them are around, 300, 350, maybe 400 pages, and that's not a very hefty book for an adult reader, a fast reader. But still, it did take a lot of time, and there were books that were just absolute slogs, and I wanted to, throw them across the room and at my bookshelf where all the good books are because they were just so painful and so slow. Because there are Pratchett books with just tons of unnecessary fluff and then these weird B plots that have absolutely nothing to do with anything that's going on, and it's just, I don't really get why they're funny sometimes, those B plots, recalling getting his nice fancy bathroom in Hogfather, but has really nothing to do with anything, no impact on the plot. It just seems completely out of place. Don't really get why it's there. But again, amusing. But slows the plot down. Don't like that at all. I liked how a lot of the books put me in a much better mood after I'd finished reading them than I was when I first started reading them. I think a lot of this had to do with the puns and the humor that Pratchett includes, the things that he was known for, the satire. But there were definitely a lot of problems I noticed in this go-around that I didn't necessarily notice in my first go-around, and there were two main ones. The first one was spelling, grammatical, those kinds of errors that just detracted from the flow of the prose, which was sometimes, as I mentioned before, not very speedy, more from the standpoint of plot progression than anything else. The second were continuity errors, something that I've mentioned several times during my summaries and my reviews. Examples. First, Tethys, who showed up at the end of The Color of Magic and then poofed by the time The Light Fantastic came around with no explanation whatsoever. And also, Rincewind had a horse in The Color of Magic that was quite clearly killed and then magically wasn't killed anymore, and he rode around on it and did stuff. Don't really know how that happened, but this is something that Pratchett struggles with. I don't know if it was because he forgot, didn't want to be bothered with something, but it was an issue and it was confusing and it happened a lot. To work off of this, I feel like I notice a lot more of why I didn't like these books now that I read them again than I did the first time around. I remember reading them the first time around and kind of forgetting details, not being able to really say why I liked things, but knowing that I did or didn't. And that just wasn't the case here. And I think a lot of the problem for me was definitely the pace. I am getting more and more used to YA novels, which are known for fast pace. Pratchett doesn't have many of these in the Discworld series, and a lot of things felt very, very slow to me. The other major factor for me was definitely disorganization, the continuity errors, forgetting about characters and then suddenly mentioning them again after basically not mentioning them at all for 300 pages. Little things like that. And then also just having some characters that really didn't appeal to me at all, like Ginger from Moving Pictures, for example. And that's another thing. There are definitely books I like a lot more because of the characters in them, and then books that I like less also because of the characters in them. Basically because they focus on someone I find stupid or boring, or both. For example, I really like Rincewind. His books are often playful, and he's always entertaining, cowardly, and running from trouble. But the books he's featured in are often the most disorganized, especially the first two he appeared in, The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic. I adore Granny because she's a badass. She can stare and glare her way to victory, use headology, and we rarely see her confidence falter. However, she is very set in her ways and rigid. We see this a lot in Equal Rights, for example. This is really the only thing I don't like about her. Nanny's a bit stupid, but her silliness and love of life appeals to me. I like Tiffany because her novels are often fun, fast-paced, and playful. I'm just gonna glare at I Shall Wear Midnight a moment because bloody hate that book. I mean, it would be so much better if just wasn't there. Tiffany is also a relatable character. She's someone who experiences self-doubt, someone who struggles with a sense of otherness, mainly because of her status as a witch, or a witch in training, depending on which novel she's in. Someone who is just trying to figure herself out and can be really sassy when she wants to be. In sum, the magical community tends to be what appeals to me, with very few exceptions. I mean, no one really likes Anagramma or Mrs. Awish. It looks like Earwig. It bothers me so much that that's pronounced Awish. It's not even funny. It's like Tia Timey. Don't really see the point in that either. But the characters outside of this community often don't appeal to me, basically at all. For example, I'm not a big fan of Moist von Lipwig. In fact, I really just do not like Moist von Lipwig at all. I hate his name. It makes me cringed. I'm not fond of his character, which has a sort of greasy feeling. But the idea of him being forced into trying to redeem himself after a life of crime is kind of interesting. I just don't think it was done in a way that appealed to me personally. Minor characters can be like this too, developed enough basically to serve a purpose, but they're not really interesting at all, and they lack depth. Anything that focused on these people or people like them was very painful for me, just definitely not as enjoyable as some of the books that focused on the witches and Rincewind. Like I said, but this is basically to be expected. There are always going to be characters that you like more than others. That's just the way the books work. That's the way that worlds work. That's the way everything works. And I understand why this is. I just wish it wasn't the case because I want to be able to enjoy everything to the fullest. And I feel like I can't when there's just that one character that just rubs you the wrong way and you just can't like them no matter how hard you try. And this is the same case for certain plot lines. There's certain plot lines that definitely didn't appeal to me either. Like, I'm not a mystery book kind of person. Like, anything with Vimes really doesn't appeal to me the same way that something with Granny and with magic and with like that fantastical trouble does. But again, something to be expected. I personally just don't like mystery books. I don't really like romance, but I really, really like fantasy. And that's the main reason why I read the Discworld novels, because these are very heavy on fantasy. They're definitely fantasy novels. My last point is, what's up with the lack of chapters? I don't know what it is with Pratchett, but he just doesn't seem to believe in them. Most of his novels do not have them at all. There are a few where it's like sections, like part 1, part 2. And there's just no chapters. There's just walls and walls of text with like a little space break to denote that he's moving on to the next area. And I really wish that wasn't the case. I feel like it just comes off as so disorganized because I don't know when his thoughts end. I mean, obviously I'm reading it and I can figure it out because I'm realizing maybe he's talking about a different character or he's in a different part of the world or something denotes that something has changed. But I would like some sort of physical marker just so I could like be prepared, have a better stopping point, things like that. And I don't get why they're not there. It's just such a simple thing, and it's so weird for me because most books have chapters. That is a thing. And Pratchett was just like, nah, I'll give those a miss, and I don't get it. So overall, this was definitely a good experience, but something that was also very overwhelming for all of the reasons you can expect. I mean, it is a very long series. It's probably the longest series I can think of. I don't think I'll ever try to reread this whole series again. It's too much, especially if it's literally the only thing you're reading for 7.5 months of your life. And I'm a fairly fast reader, and I read at least half of my week, basically, as soon as I get off of work for hours until I basically collapse of exhaustion. If I do try to do this again, and again, I don't think I will, I'm definitely going to give myself some breaks, let myself experience some other books, do some other things. So my life is just not all Discworld all the time. I am really happy that I got to read everything in order, though. As I discussed previously in my Color of Magic review, did not do that. And it was nice to see how everyone progresses and how the story progresses. But I am kind of sad that I don't get to see certain characters grow even more. Not kind of sad. I am very sad that I don't get to see certain people grow any more because, unfortunately, Pratchett died a few years ago. I would have liked to see where Tiffany Aching went. I mean, she's definitely probably my favorite character in the series outside of Granny, Nanny, and Rincewind. Maybe they're all tied. I don't know. I'm not good at this decision-making stuff. I'd like to see who she wound up with, how she evolved as like an official witch, as you will, since she's basically done with her training now. I want to see what happens to her really badly, and I can't. And I also want to know what's up with Rincewind. We haven't seen Rincewind for a while. I want to know what's going on. And I want to see Nanny progress more too, because I feel like she's kind of like a tertiary character. She always seems to be overshadowed by Granny. So having her grow into her own more, I mean, I know she's already a senior witch, but see her develop more now that Granny isn't there to overshadow her might have been interesting. But unfortunately, we don't get to see that. It's something nice to think about. And I think that basically wraps everything up for me. It was a very good experience. I obviously have some questions. Some of them are about continuity errors. Some of them are just things that are unfinished storylines for me, and I'm sure a lot of other readers. What's the thing you really wish you could see now? If Pratchett was still alive, what would you have wanted him to write? Who's your favorite character? Let me know down below in the comments. Obviously, I love Tiffany and the witches and the one wizard that I mentioned. But I always like to know what you guys think and who your favorite is, who you gravitate toward, what your favorite book is. And if you like what you saw here today, please give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up if you like Pratchett. He's a great guy. He seemed like a great guy. I really like his work. Subscribe, ring that bell so you'll know what's up, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye, guys.